tweeted? Also glasses, because it's casual Lockstin time. So specifically, with Mega Evolution returning in next year's Pokemon Legends Arceus ZA, I asked my followers, I gotta wonder, if Mega Evolution wasn't the first big Pokemon gimmick to come and go, like if we got Z-moves and Gigantamax before Megas, would it still be as popular today? I honestly don't understand its popularity other than its timing being a factor. What are your thoughts? And to put that string of words into more characters than an X allows, have you noticed just like how popular and how big of a demand for Megas returning is among the Pokemon fandom? Like, don't get me wrong, I think they're cool too. This is not me hating. Even though Mega Evolution physically and emotionally hurts the Pokemon, and that makes me kind of sad, I do think the idea is cool from a world building standpoint. Going above and beyond your physical limitations to be even better at battling is much like how real world athletes and top tier performers do a lot of damage to their bodies in the long term by overexerting themselves and pushing the human boundaries in the now. Oh yes, it's hype and they get the gold because of it, but ouch. It really does show the determination. But I think the gimmick of Mega Evolution had its time in the spotlight, and that time is now past, and that's good. We've moved on to better things, IMO. But it returning to us by going back to the region it originated in is also very cool and welcome. You know, that makes sense. Like, whenever we go back to Alola, there should be Z-moves because that's an inherent part of the region. But I don't really see why, with every new generation and every new game announcement, we get swarms of people asking to bring Mega Evolution back. New Mega Evos when? Pokemon hasn't been good, specifically since they stopped adding new Mega Evolutions, which they only ever did once. Pokemon was only ever good once. But honestly, they were kind of haphazardly pasted into Sun and Moon in the Let's Go games, only to appease these vocal fans. The plan from the get-go may have been to keep it a Gen 6 thing originally. Every generation from then on has had its unique gimmick, Z-moves, Gigantamax, Terastallizing, and they stick to their introductory gens. That was probably the plan for Gen 6 also. They just weren't expecting it to be as popular as it became. And now that we're finally returning to the region that they were introduced in, Megas are back. Just this once. This is not the return of a now permanent gimmick, people. You won't believe the number of comments and tweets I've seen of that. Especially since this is a Legends game. Why would that change the main formula? But back on track, here's a small thought experiment. Imagine, if you will, if X and Y did not introduce Mega Evolution and instead had Z moves. That'd be kind of fitting, because X, Y, Z, here's the big finisher move, is the Sun and Moon then had Gigantamaxes. Big ol' kaijus walking out of the ocean. That also fits thematically, strangely. The Pokemon grow big and get changes to their stats, and some of their physical attributes akin to Megas get changed, with Gigantamaxes specifically, but Megas don't exist yet, so this is the first time this sort of thing has happened. On top of that, regional variants, which we first saw in Sun and Moon, are here now too. Old Pokemon can come back in a regional variant form, and people love that. It's a cool new thing. And now in this hypothetical world, we get to Sword and Shield, and they introduce Mega Evolution as we see it today. Same number of Pokemon, and the same Pokemon get Mega Evolutions as there is now. Would Mega Evolution be as popular and demanded today if it were not the first big game-changing gimmick added to Pokemon? Or would it perhaps be considered a tried idea? Oh, they just took Gigantamaxes and made them small. How lame, Game Freak. Game Freak needs creativity. Why is this new gimmick only apply to some Pokemon instead of all of them, like with Dynamax and Z-moves, huh? And there were certainly a lot of tweets that agreed with me here on that point, but I guess the core of my question here is, are Megas as beloved due to nostalgia, and Mega Evo Mega fans are just sort of the Gen 1ers of today? Or is there so much love for Mega Evolution because it truly is the best gimmick idea Game Freak has ever had? And y'all had something else to say. I hated Mega Evolution at first. It felt like Pokemon was trying to add Digimon aspects. The whole evolving and then devolving at the end of the battle part. I grew to love them though, because that gave life to a lot of mons that needed it. Also was a great aspect to battle mechanics. I swear, I remember people hating Megas when they were first announced, or at least being less than thrilled about the concept. I remember when Megas were first revealed, that was the general consensus. Pokemon has finally run out of ideas and are now going full Digimon. If you don't know, Digimon Digimon has always had a mega level Digivolution thing, and they do devolve afterwards. But where my opinion differs from these tweets is the whole it gave life to Pokemon that needed it part. I saw that a lot in the replies, actually. Charizard and Mewtwo clearly needed relevancy so bad they got 2 megas each. And then you got Pokemon who are already fan favorites. Gallade and Gardevoir, Lopunny, Lucario. Like, Lucario really needed the relevancy! Also already popular, legendary Pokemon, pseudo-legendary Pokemon, Absol, Sableye, Aggron, and a slew of Gen 1 Pokemon that are always relevant by virtue of the Kanto rule. But I mean, like, it helped Medicham, and Ampharos, Audino, Glalie, and couple others that needed it, I guess. I just feel like the Pokemon chosen to get megas because they are already popular vastly outweighs the ones who needed help in that department. But maybe y'all mean relevance in the competitive metagame rather than in popularity. So then sure, yeah, but like, legendaries clearly needed the buff, and Blaziken was top tier broken in the meta already, and then they gave it a Mega Evolution on top of that. Swampert, Venusaur, and Charizard too, but to a lesser extreme. That said, it did help a lot of them in this case. Audino was a nothing, and then its Mega came out, and it became the champion's main card in the card game. And in the video games, like Mawile, Kangaskhan, Medicham, Pinsir, all helped tremendously by Megas. Good for those, like, 6 Pokemon. But arguably, Mega Evolution hurt the competitive scene so much more than it helped, just because of how small the pool of options was, especially in X and Y. Suddenly, every team had to have one of these 28 Pokemon, and even then, only 5 of them are truly that good as Megas. And then the Oraz days. It seemed like not using Mega Rayquaza was akin to shooting yourself in the knee before a hurdling race. And that would explain why I saw a lot of replies saying, while less flashy and cool, they prefer Dynamax and Z-moves and Terrestrialization from a competitive standpoint, since they apply to all Pokemon rather than literally 6% of them. I've always preferred the mechanics that any Pokemon can use. Especially in X and Y, I'd end up spending a long time trying to choose what Mega Pokemon to have on my team, because the pool was relatively small and I had to go out of my way to have one. If we got Megas after the others, I think people would be angry about a gimmick not all Pokemon can use. Plus, as I insinuated, really needed it is such a strong string of words that I simply can't agree with. Not every Pokemon needs to be relevant or capable in the competitive meta. Arguably, most shouldn't. There's nothing wrong with Pokemon designed for world building instead of top-tier battling. Little one-off, funny, or scary Pokemon for the Monster of the Week formula that the anime uses is clearly in need of a wide variety of monsters with different purposes. They can't all be powerful, competitive, meta, punch you in the faces. You know? And since we're talking Kalos, see Furfrou. Not competitive in the least, it's not even good in the single-player game. This Pokemon sucks, and yet they gave the thing 10 distinct forms. That's a lot of work. So why? Because Kalos is based on France, and what animal is more French than the French poodle, which famously has many different trims, and is a perfect world-building piece in a region that's all about fashion and beauty. Yes, Furfrou needs a Mega Evolution to be relevant, but no, it doesn't. It's a set piece. Let's objectify this dog. But speaking of many forms, that's another way of making old Pokemon relevant again. You don't need Mega Evolution specifically. Are we considering regional variants as a factor? A big draw of Megas is that they give new life to older Pokemon. If we are saying variants also came out first, I think Megas would still be popular, just not as popular. It takes old Pokemon, makes them stronger, and gives them a new design. I'd like to think of the Paradox Pokemon as people's reaction to Megas if they came out in Gen 9. People love the Paradox Pokemon. They really do. Hence, whoa, a self-promo, new shirt design. Look at this, I love it. There is a catch though. It's not on Gnoggin.net. Well, because shirts suddenly got really expensive to make, and even if I emptied both the business and my personal bank account, I couldn't afford half of the stock, so it's on Teespring. I'm dubbing it the other Gnoggin store. And it also has a lot of our older designs. I figured I might as well, like, spruce it up a little bit. Now, personally, to be honest, I would always prefer you going to Gnoggin.net because the shirts that we make there are very soft, very nice, durable. This is like a nice, thick material. This, in my opinion, is an S-tier shirt that we printed a super cool design on. And then Teespring's like, yeah, it's okay. You know, the print quality's good, but the shirt itself definitely feels cheaper. So go to the Teespring link down in the description, add it to your cart, and wait for a sale. Spring sale. This design is clearly inspired by the Paradox Pokemon, featuring our little Gnoggin skull right in the middle, half past, half future, surrounded by silhouettes of various monster parts. Link below. Your support is always welcome and amazing. Thanks for checking it out. But back on topic now. Do you have an old Pokemon you want to make relevant in battles and popularity again? Give it a stronger regional variant, or something akin to a Paradox Pokemon, or a Convergent Evolution, right? Now they are relevant again, and they're not attached to an arguably silly gimmick that's tied down to a generation only visible in some battles and extremely limited in scope, which is inherent to its whole design. It can now just always exist, just about anywhere it wants to. Because it's true, me included, people do love new forms of Pokemon, which Megas were the first of, bringing us right back to the whole, is it just nostalgia thing? Before Gen 6, there was a very standard Pokemon formula, and every Pokemon game did something small to change it, from adding breeding, double battles, normal special splitting, triple battles, but at its core, the gameplay and the whole Pokemon formula was the same. Gen 4 and 5 added a lot of Pokemon with forms, but at their core, every Pokemon still only evolved up to 2 times. To break that precedent after 17 years was unheard of. Even if it was only a temporary in-battle thing, the idea of an extra evolution was revolutionary by Pokemon standards. How many times have we as children imagined a stage 4 of some of our favorite Pokemon? I know I did. I think that's what it boils down to. Mega Evolution feels like a logical next step of the Pokemon evolution formula, as I remember talking about 4th Evos on the playground in the 2000s. Yeah, it was an idea so many kids thought would be super cool already. Personally, I remember so many Mew 3s and "This is Charizard" fan art among my 3rd grade class. I wonder if I can find that Charizard picture. And so when they announced the existence of Mega Evolution, the fans went nuts. It's almost like making a childhood dream come true. Of course, though, this was before we knew that they were only giving it to 20-something Pokemon, most of them from Gen 1. But still, the idea of Mega Evolutions was an extremely popular one. Not only because it broke the rule of Pokemon only evolving twice, but it also gave new forms to Pokemon, which we now know is the most popular aspect of it, given the popularity of regional variants and the like. And this idea exploded, arguably ushering in the golden age of Poketubing. Between X and Y and the eventual dropping of Mega Evolution and graphic, new Mega Evolutions! Top 10 possible new Mega Evolutions! Possible Mega Evolution tier list top 10! New Mega Evolution leak Pugface? Watch me scroll through fan art and call them leaks on other websites. The top 10 big words I can add to my thumbnail because the thumbnail needs to have the whole title in giant, bold, and colorful font. My backgrounds are too busy and animated. It was an era of Poketubing I do not miss, but I also have to think for my own growth. And arguably, the hype surrounding the idea of Mega Evolutions made Megas out to be much, much bigger and much more popular than the real ones on their own did, or would have done otherwise. Like, don't get me wrong, Game Freak played it smart. On top of adding new evolutions, they added lore. Megas had their own dex entries, and the region of Kalos was almost built around the existence of Megas. Hoenn too, in the remakes, it was cool and deep and well thought out, but it was never as cool or hype as the idea of them.
For me, it's pure flavor. The idea of seeing something close to a 4th form of a favorite Pokemon after all these years is just too good. It's the coolest gimmick.
Yes, but Arlo, notice, even you say the idea of seeing something close to a 4th form. It was like a potato chip. The flavor was there. It was good, but it was missing something. Like, yeah, it's good. Maybe the next one. But the craving builds. You need more. More. You need more. More potato chips. That's so good. You need more. Game Freak won't do it, so the fandom will. Please, fan artists, Poketuber, please. Yes, I am comparing Mega Evolution to junk food because it's designed to be good, but not to be satisfying. Because they want you to crave more so that you buy more. And no, I'm not saying Game Freak did that on purpose, of course. I think that's just kind of how it wound up. I'm pretty sure if the other gimmicks were treated like Megas, they would have the same effect, because Megas went all the way to Let's Go while Z-moves stayed in Gen 7. At the time, no one thought they would go away. At the time, I don't think we expected it to be temporary either. It's like giving us another bag of chips. Oh, thank you. At the time, there was no indication that Mega Evolution was intended as a temporary thing the way Z-moves, Dynamax, and Terastallization came to be. At the time, every new big change to the Pokemon formula stayed for future games, with the one exception of triple battles, but they had a good excuse. It was all over games journalism sites at the time. Game Freak was removing triple battles because the 3DS simply couldn't handle that many Pokemon models on screen at once. And fair enough, triple battles weren't used that much anyway, so nobody batted an eye. So the general consensus was that Mega Evolution was here to stay as a new key aspect of Pokemon battling, especially after it was added to the Gen 3 remakes, which nearly doubled the number of Megas and remade the game to have a story surrounding them too. And that definitely added to the hype of the idea, for sure. Even the naysayers at the time, who weren't fans of the mechanic, still probably mostly thought it was here to stay. It's clearly intended to stay forever, fans of the idea said. It's too good of an idea to not, and we just craved more. They're just saving the Mega Evo of Flygon for the next game. Clearly, you know, like, it has to happen. It's too good of an idea for them not to. In the meantime, though, I'm gonna watch 400 Poketubers all talk about Mega Flygon. I'd even argue that they were craved so much more because they never really gave us a good amount of them. We wanted that extra chip. It was so unsatisfying, the number they gave us. And all that just only made people fall in love with the idea of them more, because these Poketubers are having so many cool ideas. The kids on the playground are having so many cool ideas. But oh how naive we were. They kept them in the next few games. But they didn't add any, which only further added to the hype or anti-hype. Why keep the gimmick around if new Megas aren't going to be added? Oh, because they're going to add new ones in the next game. They just didn't want to make more Megas and regional variants at the same time, but that's done. Now, there's no more regional variants. That was an Alola only thing. More Megas next gen. They have to. We want them. There's no Mega Flygon yet. There has to be. But now we have Z-moves. Are we just going to stack Z-moves on top of Megas? And what about the next gimmick? Z-moves can leave! But Megas are here to stay! New Megas when? Honestly, after Z-moves, Terastallizing, and Gigantamax, it's clear that gimmicks like this, Megas included, stick to, or should stick to, the generation they were introduced in. And along with regional variants and convergent evolution Pokemon, cross-generation new evolutions, paradox Pokemon-like things, like, we don't need Mega Evolution to give us new forms of Pokemon anymore. We have all of these other much more permanent and much better looking and well thought out options for bringing old Pokemon into relevance again. So I guess I just figured the Mega hype would have died down by now, right? And then oh man, it's like giving up junk food for the sake of your health and keeping away from it for years and years, but then you're like, oh, I could just have one chip for the sake of a prop in a video. It's for work. And then you eat 2 whole bags. Clearly, there's something about this gimmick people love that I just don't really see. And so I argue it's mostly nostalgia for a time back when it was like the only way for a Pokemon to get a new form. Even though these forms are mostly like, ooh, you put spikes on it, wow, and hair. Look at how Metagross pointed its feet forward. Guys, look. I Mega Evolved. Mega Slowbro though, I'll give you. I'll give you that one. That is a triple S tier design right there. Mega Evolutions are inherently cool. The children yearn for Digivolution. I think it's loved because people love power-ups and form changes. It's like the closest thing to a Pokemon going full Super Saiyan. Mega Evos always felt like a Super Saiyan version of the Pokemon. It's exaggerated and cool looking and also not permanent. Mega Evolution is still my favorite gameplay gimmick simply because it felt fun to put the Pokemon in the get cooler cocoon. The bond a Pokemon has with its trainer allows it to have a magical girl transformation into something more powerful. Yeah, that makes sense. Pokemon is an anime and references plenty of anime tropes. And what's cooler than the iconic trope of a big transformation sequence to become the ultimate hero and finally take out the bad guy? There's a pretty strong correlation between people who love Megas, flashiest gimmick, worst balance, and despise Terra, least flashy, best balanced. So it's for sure just the cool factor of it. I can definitely see that, and in the anime it was certainly hype. Mega Evolution certainly worked wonders there. It super upped the cool factor of the anime. But for the games, I just can't get behind a gimmick that only benefits certain hand-picked Pokemon. We want you to use these Pokemon. At least the other gimmicks can benefit every Pokemon. Here you go, Timbo. Play with this Pokemon.
But I wanted to play with this one.
Oh, well, that's very nice. But you gotta play with this one if you want a strong team.
Oh.
And also, we made the most merchandise and cards of it.
But I don't...
Play with it or leave! While they're not perfect, Mega Evolutions feel like the ones with the most potential to work around. Even introduced later, Mega Evolution would have been a hit. I think on top of its timing-induced nostalgia being a factor, it is still definitely the flashiest and coolest gimmick we've gotten so far, albeit in a 6th grade fan art playground kind of way. It's like, ooh, I'm gonna beat you with my super Kamehameha attack! Oh no, you're not, because I just transformed into my ultimate form! I grew spikes and doodahs and hairs and wings all over. I've got sharp edges and cuts now. I'm super cool and unbeatable, and I just ruined the online meta because I'm just so strong now.
What's a meta?
Like, don't get me wrong, it is cool, but not to the degree a lot of folks seem to make it out to be, IMO. And I think its timing has a lot to do with that. I am very glad to have learned the many varying opinions on the matter, though, through all this tweetery. I somehow never made the connection of kid selves drawing 4th evolutions of big fully evolved Pokemon, and Mega Evolutions almost being that. All the way down to their designs themselves being like, kid drew them. And the chosen Pokemon too, like you got the super popular ones that have a billion fan arts also, but there's always that one weird kid that's like, ooh, Sharpedo! It breathes teeth now! But despite having learned all those opinions, I still think Megas are better left in Kalos, and in that one universe's version of Hoenn too. Carrying them on into Alola was a mistake, IMO, and in Let's Go and Masters, it's really just fan service. But I asked the Xers, and now I'll ask you, what do you think about Mega Pokemon? Do you think my take on its abundant popularity being at least partially timing and nostalgia-based is reasonable? Let me know down in the comments, and never stop using your noggin. I got a vacuum.